So for this video, I'm kind of going to take a step back and not go on my traditional rants about the regular Weeknd's newest album, Starboy. One of my viewers on YouTube, I'll list his name in a second, uh, said that I should go over his original mixtapes, which consists of 3 different mixtapes: House of Balloons, Thursday, and Echoes of Silence. So I figured, why not go back to where it all began, with Abel Tesfaye, and kind of go into his original story and how he rose up. So with that being said, I guess I'll just jump right into kind of his early life and the origins of the band in general, of his artistry in general, and kind of where some of the motivation came from. So as a lot of the songs kind of annotate to drugs and alcohol and heavy drug use, The Weeknd actually started doing drugs at the age of 11 when he started smoking marijuana. But beyond that, he attended 2 high schools, both of which he dropped out of, didn't graduate. Him and his cousin were very close at a young age, and they did a lot together, whether that was stealing from stores or just screwing around outside, stuff like that. So his stage name was inspired, ironically, because his high school dropout status. One time, him and his cousin, Isam, I believe is how you pronounce it, left school. And left school on the weekend, and they never came back to school. That was the time they dropped out. So he kind of kept that, and they changed the spelling to Weekend with ND, not END, to not make problems with another Canadian band at the time. So that's kind of where the original stage name came from, and kind of a little bit about his early life before he began his career making mixtapes. So further than this, so Tesfaye met the producer Jeremy Rose. I think it was before 2011, 2010, 2009, somewhere around that time period. And Jeremy Rose had an idea for an R&B project called The Weeknd. He tried pitching it to multiple other artists, and Rose played one of his instruments for Tesfaye, and he freestyled over it, which is pretty cool when a lot of artists do that. And immediately after that happened, they began working on the album. So right after this happened, he produced his first 3 songs: What You Need, Loft Music, and The Morning. And multiple others that Tesfaye just rapped over, kind of freestyled over these ones. And Rose actually scrapped the other ones that he rapped over, which is kind of weird. But he did let him keep the 3 that he produced. Again, The Morning, Loft Music, and What You Need. So he allowed them to keep them in the condition they were in, and he said that he would also be credited for them, which he has been. So in 2010, December 2010, Tesfaye uploaded them to YouTube, all 3 of his singles, under the name The Weeknd. And at this point, his identity wasn't known. No one really knew who he was. A lot of people really liked these songs. By word of mouth, Drake actually pushed them on his personal channel. He included a blog, and he mentioned The Weeknd's name and stuff like this. Go to YouTube, listen to him, stuff like this. And that really, when you have an artist as successful as Drake pushing another artist, a lot of people are like, well, hey, he must be good. So they kind of that helped generate interest for The Weeknd within the modern realm of media. And he also received credit in Pitchfork Media, and the New York Times also took up on the story of this rising artist. So on March 21st in 2011, roughly 3 or 4 months later, Tesfaye released his first 9-track mixtape, which was, like I mentioned earlier, House of Balloons. And he released them for free on his website. So it was a mixtape he just threw out there, kind of thing. And it featured productions by Doc McKinney, Elangelo, and Rose wasn't accredited for these tracks. But this first group, House of Balloons, they received a lot of credit from critics. It was critically acclaimed, and it was named one of the shortlisted nominees for 2011 Polaris Music Prize, which is pretty big thing. So in July 2011, a few months after he pushed House of Balloons, he went on a tour, and had his first performance in Mod Club in Toronto with Drake. So, ironically, with the same guy who kind of pushed him to begin with. Obviously, they were in contact. And by doing this, Drake looked at him from a balcony. That was kind of the weird part of it. He just watched him as he sang. So I think there was some communication there. So he went for an hour and a half, and this kind of generated a lot of people riled up. Like, this guy's a good singer. He can go. A few more productions and performances around Toronto on the Canadian Amphitheater. And throughout this entire period of time, him and Drake got very close. They went back and forth, lending each other music, featuring kind of thing back and forth. He also collaborated with Drake specifically on tracks on Drake's multi-platinum Take Care. And he also was a special guest. So they were pretty close. Obviously, the fact that Drake did attribute a little bit to The Weeknd's initial growth. So OVO Fest 2011, he was during there, and the Weeknd at this point decided he wasn't going to do any interviews. He was only going to communicate through Twitter with press or everybody else. So later on from this, in August, so again only a few months later, he released his second mixtape called Thursday. I'm going to go into each of these mixtapes in a second too. I just want to give kind of the background of when they were all released. So he was August 2011. He releases Thursday, and it was again a free digital download on his website. This one was also well received by critics. There was a lot of people really enjoying his new music, and they liked this stuff a lot. And then this moves on to his third mixtape called Echoes of Silence, which was released on the 21st of the same year. So he released 3 mixtapes within 1 year period, which is pretty phenomenal. They were because they were all the 3 2011 mixtapes, they effectively became known as a trilogy, which we now see. This was really the beginning of his fan base. It was also a very different kind of music he had. His older music is different. It has a R&B theme, but it's not what you would hear today. In my next video, I want to go into the style of music that he portrayed and the difference that we see. So on top of this, so back after the trilogy was created in 2011, April 2012, he began performance at Coachella, which is a massive festival, music festival. People come from all over the world to listen to this music. It's kind of a debut for a lot of people, but it's also major bands that play, obviously. He sold out 2 shows in New York. They were positively reviewed by the Rolling Stone, and he went on to European festivals all over Europe. And in June, it was reported the Balloon Trilogy had been downloaded 8 million times, and it would be formally released later in the year. So that was pretty fantastic, obviously, in that point in time. And then in 2012, in September of 2012, he signed with Republic Records under his own label EXO, which I kind of mentioned in a previous video. And then the compilation Trilogy was released, where he added remastered versions of all the songs, and he also put 3 additional songs in the mix, which is really cool. Just remastering them to make them sound better on different devices and kind of, tweak anything that was there. And then at this point, he also officially accredited Jeremy Rose, as a producer of some of this music and writer on 3 of the copies. He also got nominated for Sound of 2013 Poll and some other things too. So I kind of want to go directly into the trilogy aspect itself. So like I previously said, it's a compilation album. It was released under the EXO Republic Records name in 2012, so a year roughly after all 3 mixtapes came out. Again, it had remixes, or remastered, of The House of Balloons, Thursday, and Echoes of Silence. And then this kind of was really just his year later fans kind of being like, yeah, this is great, but we really want more. So he charted number 5 in Canada, and number 4 in Canada and the U.S. respectively. So in both these countries, he was doing fantastic things. So I'm kind of just wrapping up some more stuff on the trilogy in general. Let's see here. One cool thing about each of these mixtapes in general was Disc 1 only had 10 songs. Disc 2 had 10 songs, and Disc 3 also had 10 songs. So it's only 10 songs ranging from roughly 3 minutes to 7 minutes, which is a pretty wide range. But the cool thing is these songs came out in 1 year together. So he released 30 songs in 1 year, which is not an easy thing to do. Not many other artists do this. They release maybe that in a month. And in 1 year they released just a 20-track album, but it takes him a year. He did it 3 times, which I think is pretty phenomenal. It just shows that he did work really hard for the position he's in right now, and all those other work with him. He was the main driving force, in my opinion, behind all of this. So I'm going to go in a little bit of detail of each of the mixtapes: House of Balloons, Thursday, and Echoes of Silence. And like I said, tomorrow I'm going to do another video, kind of regarding the style of each of these albums and where I find my most prestige in each one. So with House of Balloons, this was obviously his debut mixtape, and it was again released on free download. This album did have some R&B music in there, soul music, had trip hop, indie rock, dream pop tone. So it was a lot of different stuff thrown in there. I think this was just because this was his trying out thing. He didn't know what worked for him yet. This was kind of essentially his trial period, honestly. And he revealed the House of Balloons at Spencer Avenue in Toronto in 2013. It's actually a real place. It's not just a title. In 2013, he revealed that it was actually a legitimate location. So in this beginning album that he released, it had samples of some different stuffs, like from the Beach House and Aleja's 2001 song "Rock the Boat." Had heavy samples from Happy House. A lot of samples from different kind of music that really made people, I think, I know that sound. Wait, this is a different guy singing, and kind of just play with that notion, and that really kind of draws in fan base. The song "High for This" by The Weeknd was actually featured in the final season of the HBO show Entourage 2011, which also gave it some more fan base. And the first official music video ever by The Weeknd for his song "The Knowing" hit the internet on Vimeo before it hit YouTube, which is pretty cool. And that song was first released in House of Balloons. The video was directed by a French filmmaker who also worked with CeeLo Green, the singer. So it's actually an 8-minute clip, which is pretty long for music video standards. And it's a science fiction, time traveling, weird battle of the sexes that you should probably watch in HD, as people say. But upon its release in general, the House of Balloons received a lot of critic recommendation. People really liked this. They stood behind his music. And this was like the low string profile buzz that he needed. And then again, obviously Drake had a huge influence on being so successful and bringing in this kind of new guy. So as of right now, my favorite song would probably be "Wicked Games." It might be my favorite song of the entire album. Not only the album, but as his entire production. "Wicked Games" is a pretty good song, and it is a different style, as I said I'll go into later this week. So on to his second production, "Thursday." So again, this was his second one. This was released in August 19th, about middle of the way through the year, of 2011. Again, this one was also critically acclaimed, and it was Polaris Music Prize nominated. This one is a different style. Again, this includes down-tempo, dubstep, dream pop, hip-hop, rock, and reggae styles. So again, this is him trying out different music styles. It's just a different style. Again, he's testing the waters. So in this, he also contributed during this time to Drake's "The Zone." Or no, I'm sorry. Young Money and Drake were featured in the song "The Zone," which is probably my favorite song of this album personally. They both do a good job, and again, it's a different style. So whether the name Thursday comes up, I'm not really sure of at the moment. I'll get back on that. But on to his critically acclaimed, why this was so big. So at Metacritic, which assigns a normalized rating of 0 to 100 to reviews, a rating out of 100, the mixtape received an average score of 80, which is pretty high for being his second mixtape ever released. You have to understand. It was only 17 reviews. 17 reviews to give this guy an 80, which is huge. Evan Rultuski at the AV Club said, quote, "It's a rare songwriter who can craft music that's so repellent yet so irresistible." So people really liked this this type of music and what he was producing. They really stood behind it, and he had a lot of different R&B tracks that people were like, "Wow, we can stand behind this guy. He sounds good. People like this music. He has a growing fan base, and obviously today he is critically acclaimed worldwide." So, like I said earlier, "The Zone" is probably my favorite song in this album, and "Life of the Party" is a close second. So with that, I'm going to move on to "Echoes of Silence," which again is his third release, third mixtape released, and third part of the trilogy. Again, it follows his music prize nomination, and this is the final installment within the trilogy, which combined all three in 2011. So this was preceded by the release of the single "Initiation," which he returned with a longtime collaborator, Carlo Montagnese, I believe is how you pronounce that. I'm probably saying that wrong. But he returned to produce Clams Casino, Drop Life of the XO Crew, so different people in the XO Crew that Weeknd was a part of. He helped them produce stuff as well. And then at the end of Same Old Song, rapper Juicy J contributes a little bit too. So he had features from pretty extensive rappers in these albums. And each one of the mixtapes, he had extensive, pretty high rolling rappers join in and feature, which is pretty cool. So this one received an average score of 82 with Metacritic, which again, 17 reviews, even better than the last one. And Evan Rultuski of AV Club said this about it: "It's Tesfay's total commitment to his ghastly persona that makes Echoes of Silence so entrenchingly chilling." Again, this is obviously a suspenseful and pretty upbeat review of an album, and it really shows that his music is very unique, but at the same time, it is a darker music. He talks about love and sex and drugs a lot, but it's dark, druggy, and so Benjamin Bowles of Now said, "The mood is still dark, druggy, claustrophobic, but this time Tesfaye is channeling a pain that's less about cold emptiness than it is more about traditional heartbreak and longing." I think that really just sums up a lot of his music currently, and definitely his older stuff. This marks a point in time where he was a young producer coming up. He had a lot of things going on personally in his life, and I think it's fair to say that his music is dark for a reason, and whether that was his upbringing in general or just the stuff that he had go on as an early producer, what say you? Either way, his music is pretty unique, and there's nothing anybody can really say that defers that. He's just a unique artist, and his music is continually growing. And I think with his latest release of Starboy, it just shows how far he can really go. So with that, I'd like to end this up, and I'd like to say thank you to Mike Kalor for commenting and telling me to do this. It was actually kind of fun reading up on his some of the Weeknd's older stuff, and kind of going into what made that music. So with this, thank you. Follow, like, and thanks again, Mike Kalor.